Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Today, we're really pleased to have Veeam here as a guest to discuss, the integration between HP virtualization and Veeam and how we can provide a better platform for protecting your private cloud environment. I'm Harris Schneiderman. I'm the host of this webinar. Thank you for joining today. I run our hybrid cloud practice here for the region. I'm also pleased to be joined by Christopher Berry. Christopher, welcome. Feel free if you want to say a few words, introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Harris. Yes, I'm storage pre-sales, so I work in New South Wales, and basically assist our sales guys with design, sizing, and so forth with storage.
Terrific, terrific. Thanks for being here today. And I'm really pleased to have Ben Young here from Veeam. Ben is the field CTO for Veeam software for the APJ region. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much. Couldn't be happy to be here and start talking about our sort of joint solution that what we've got and bring into the market.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Great. Well, here's the plan for today. We've got an hour webinar coming up. I'm going to start off telling you a little bit about what we see in the virtualization market, current challenges, issues our customers are facing, and what the analysts are saying. Then I'll hand it over to Ben, and he'll give you an overview of the Veeam Data Platform and the partnership that Veeam and HPE have together and the solution that we built. And then I'll come back a bit later. I'll give you a bit of an overview of Morpheus Veeam Essentials. Chris will talk about Private Cloud Business Edition, and then we'll bring it together for an end-to-end architecture of that full solution with all the components working, as one. And then we'll share some case studies. And then we'll go to Q&A. Now, I would encourage everyone throughout the session, please feel free to ask questions live. That's the purpose of a live show. There is the chat section, if you like, or there's a Q&A section in the webinar if you're not familiar. So please feel free to put your questions there. We will address them as we go, and we'll, time permitting, we'll take some live questions as well. Okay, if you ask a great question, maybe we'll ask you to ask it live. So just to kick things off, I want to talk a bit about where we are in terms of the virtualization industry, because I think, a fair question to ask is, virtualization's been around for a long time. This is, a problem that I think a lot of us as IT professionals feel that we solved over a decade ago. So, why are we still talking about this? And the answer is twofold. Number one, virtualization is still an incredibly pervasive technology. It's one of the most common types of workloads that we see in an IT environment today, both traditional as well as modern. But also, the backdrop, of course, is all the changes that Broadcom has brought to the industry when they acquired VMware. And that's created, significant financial pressures for our customers. And it's made them rethink the virtualization platform that they're running, because obviously VMware is a fine technology and it works really well, but if the price has gone up 3x, 4x, 5x, or more, that really changes the value equation for a lot of our customers. So that's why we're talking about this today. But I'd also say too, this problem is much bigger than just virtualization. Obviously, that is an important workload, but there's other workloads that we need to think about protecting as well. So of course, we have container-based workloads and cloud workloads that we have to think about now. And of course, we also have AI workloads, and we need to consider those because they're becoming increasingly more important. And what we see is that, many companies are struggling under the burden of having multiple tools and multiple teams and multiple environments to manage them and not being able to do that in a holistic way. So from both a management standpoint as well as a protection standpoint, what we want to do is give our customers a unified platform. And that's really what we bring to the table here with HP and Veeam in our partnership, which you're going to hear about more soon. Now, I've got some interesting information from the analysts. This is from Gartner. And obviously, we're already seeing the impacts of these significant increases in VMware licensing. So for one, the analysts are seeing, increased uptake from various competitors, whether that be Nutanix or Hyper-V or Red Hat OpenShift Virtualization or HPE HVM. All of these partners are seeing, increased adoption and increased market share as a result of VMware's licensing changes. Now, all these companies are HP partners, to be clear. So, VMware, Nutanix, Hyper-V, and Red Hat are all HP partners, and HVM is obviously our product. So we work with all of these companies, and we will continue to support these different platforms. Our focus is around giving customers choice. And the vision that we see, which is very much in line with Gartner's vision, is that we're moving from a world where the whole industry was consolidated around a single vendor. 2 years ago, VMware had 80% market share in Australia. Now we're seeing that market become more fragmented, and more companies are taking a multi-hypervisor approach. So perhaps they're changing their platform completely to a different vendor, or they're moving to some sort of hybrid model where they have some VMware and some other platform as well. So we're seeing some significant changes in the industry. And obviously, if you change your virtualization platform, then you need to think very carefully about the operations that sit behind that, and data protection is key. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Ben to tell us more about the Veeam Data Platform and what you guys have been up to in terms of protecting virtualized workloads.
Yeah, thank you, Harris. Yeah, we've been up to a lot, and so I think we'll start with a little bit of a refresher of where we're at. Some of you may or may not be Veeam customers already, and if you're not, that's fine. But if you are, here's a bit of a refresher where we're at, regardless of kind of where you're at. And I think a lot of this will actually mirror what Harris said in the opening. They're going to support other platforms. It's all about providing flexibility and options. No matter where you are on your journey, what your path and your destination might be here. So it all starts with the Veeam Data Platform, that pillar up the top left-hand side. That's kind of what we've had in market for a very long time. That encompasses, backup and replication, Veeam One, and Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. In recent years, we've also kind of expanded more into the as-a-service offerings. So that has broad coverage for SaaS-based applications such as M365, Entra ID, Salesforce. So as customer environments are moving, maybe they're not wanting to, or you're not wanting to maintain those environments yourselves, you can now consume that as a service. But probably what's most relevant to this audience is actually what we call Vault, which is our as-a-service storage offering, which gets you that offsite, immutable, always encrypted copy of your backups. And that plugs directly into the Veeam Data Platform itself. And you consume it as a service. Underpinning it is a bunch of cybersecure platforms, SLA-based SWAT teams and analysis on the environment and all the scanning that sort of comes along with that. And underpinning everything, I suppose, are these 5 pillars. Of course, backup and recovery, something Veeam's been doing for a very long time, but probably most relevant to this conversation outside of the backup and recovery side is this portability play. Veeam prides itself in its ability to have this portable data format to move data from one to the other. So we'll cover a little bit of that in a bit more depth in a few slides' time. And of course, we couldn't be having a conversation about IT without security. It's the front of everyone's mind. So I really want to kind of cover through a lot of the things that we're doing in the security space to make your overall resilience, your overall security posture better. And of course, underpinning absolutely everything here is data and intelligent operations. And you'll see where that blends through as we move through this presentation. And so Veeam really around the outside are sort of some of the things that we support. You can see those SaaS-based applications. You can also see things like AWS and Azure. So we have actually the ability to protect those workloads there. And of course, Hyper-V, VMware, all these hypervisors you may already be using. And then more recently, which we're really proud to announce, is a direct integration with HPE's hypervisor, which is why I'm on here talking to you today. Let me just go next slide here. I see. So if we run through a bit of a recap of where Veeam's come from. Oh, sorry, Harris, if I've bumped up your thing there. Okay, so as resilience has changed, or the definition of resilience changed, as the market has changed, Veeam's kind of responded every step of the way. So Veeam's sort of first act, if you like, was all about operational resilience. Bringing out support for Veeam Backup and Replication version 1 on VMware way back in the day. And then we started pioneering technologies like the instant VM recovery. That's the ability to boot directly from backup storage without actually having to transit a machine completely to production storage to get up and running. Obviously has a lot of use cases from DR or simple restores, pretty powerful. And of course, observability became important. So that's why we introduced Veeam One, the monitoring tool that sits across all of your Veeam infrastructure as well as your hypervisor infrastructure, and actually having an observability layer. And that's gone from strength to strength as we've released more versions of that. And that's particularly where a lot of our AI and resilience's focus is on that observability plane. And of course, the cloud came along, and we started bringing out, support for those GCP environments, Azure, AWS, and of course, some other hypervisors also were then started to be supported. Hyper-V, AHV, agent-based physical workloads, and so we started bolstering that. Sorry, my little clicker's a bit small. And then we sort of entered the second act, if you like, the cyber resilience phase. That's when the internet started getting nasty and we're all trying to attack each other. And so we started layering in different functions and features into our portfolio, such as, we brought out the hardened Linux repository, the ability for you to have this immutable repository that sits on premise. We brought out different SaaS protection as those workloads moved from sort of on-premise to the cloud. We have different storage integrations and the ability to do replicas and different orchestration of all of our backups. And of course, the malware detection side was very critical. Then we started to need to actually start scanning backups as they were running through. And then we're now moving into sort of Veeam's third act, if you like. We made an acquisition of a DSPM provider last year. And now we're starting to move into the space. So security AI, very market leader in the DSPM space and AI governance. And so we're now starting to blend the traditional kind of backup and recovery worlds with this DSPM world. And we're really excited what we're going to start bringing to market this year and well beyond that. But really the pillar for all of this last year was this V13 release. And we've got some slides on that, so we'll talk about that side of things. Okay. So I want to recap where we're at with V13. V13 came out sort of towards the end of last year in the second half, but it was pretty fundamentally different from any other Veeam release. Veeam has traditionally been deployed on Windows operating systems, and we really restarted refactoring this from the ground up. And we're happy to ship what we now call the Veeam Software Appliance. And the Veeam Software Appliance is really different from what we've done in the past. In the past, you were responsible for the operating system and hardening that, securing that. But now Veeam actually takes care of that, and with flexible deployment offerings. So you can deploy it directly into a hypervisor through something like an OVA package, or you can actually install it as an ISO onto whatever hardware-based appliance you want. You've still got the flexibility there. We also bolstered the role-based access control side of things. So least privilege controls, obviously very important. So your ability to scope down exactly what your operators can and can't do with what types of infrastructure, what maybe restore targets they can do, or even with what actions within that environment itself. And of course, authentication layer. We started blending in the ability for you to bring your own authentication to this and integrate that directly into the appliance. And then we started thinking about how we could offer high availability. And so we have the ability now to deliver this as a high availability solution. We've rewritten all of the database side of things under the hood. We can now have this cluster effectively of Veeam servers, and then as or when you need to fail over to another site, you can do that and it will automatically connect to the other side. So for certain environments that require that level of uptime on their backup environment, this becomes a really important feature. And then we started pioneering other technologies too, which is particularly relevant in this day and age with, supply chain around hardware availability and memory prices going up. So our ability to actually let you leverage Azure, particularly when the data is stored on Veeam Data Cloud Vault, our as a service storage offering, the ability to leverage our portability alongside that as a service storage to actually instantly recover virtual machines from that cloud storage to Microsoft Azure. So you think around what that could be used for from a data recovery perspective, maybe a backup testing perspective, clean rooms, and sort of everything in between. Anything you can think of there, you could leverage the cloud, burst into the cloud for whatever you need it for. And of course, we started revolutionizing the way that you interact with Veeam itself. So it traditionally was a GUI-based install that you would use. We're now moving into the web-based world, much like VMware went through with their kind of their ability to kind of manage those VMware environments. Eventually, they transitioned across to web-based user interface, and we're on the same journey. So we've got a lot of the features in there already, and then with every other release we bring out, more and more functionality will land there until that becomes the only entry point really for Veeam is to manage it through the web interface. And then we've got this AI-powered intelligence side of things. So really making those day two operations not only easier for you to manage, but also we're starting to leverage AI for doing things like malware analysis agent, trying to find and assess those restore points for integrity. And also this deep analysis agent. So making sure we're observing all of those things that we're collecting up through into Veeam 1 to, to make you more secure. Okay. Sorry, it's a bit laggy on my old click. So I want to run you through how we think about identifying threats in your environment, and it kind of roughly works through in 3 phases. The first is actually before backup. So think about this as your proactive layer. Obviously, we've talked about this Veeam software appliance, making sure that your backup environment is as secure as possible. And it's going to help with the Veeam software appliance. We've stripped all the unnecessary services out. We've put all the sensible defaults when it comes on. When it comes to that operating system, we've deployed it, we've managed it, we'll continually update that. Then it's all about understanding that data, that DSPM sort of layer here. What data lives where? What sensitivity is that? Understanding data and where it resides will help you not only create better protection policies for it, but if you did have a breach, you can understand also where that data resided, or maybe you just want to, change the way that you are recovering in terms of prioritizing certain workloads over another. Then we have a thing called Recon. We acquired a incident response firm, particularly in the ransomware space, called Coveware. They deal with nearly 1,000 ransomware cases every single year, from everything from negotiation to identification of that threat actor, advising you on regulatory things. And we've actually taken some of their reconnaissance tools, packaged it up, and actually deployed it through the backup environment. The reason we do this is, our own research and other market research shows that during an attack in your environment, attackers will often try and find that backup environment. They want to go after that backup environment and try and, remove one of your insurance policies, so to speak, by, removing your ability to recover. And so this recon tool is actually designed to spot these early warning signs, things like tools that shouldn't be necessarily on a backup server. Maybe it's a remote team viewer type application, or things that are commonly used for lateral movement. Right the way through to, browsing history, Windows event logs, and we start mapping out all of this information across that backup environment, and that actually feeds back up through to the threat dashboard and will eventually flow its way back through to Veeam 1 in recent releases. Then the incident API is really interesting itself. You obviously invest heavily in other security tools in your environment, and what the incident API allows you to do is to configure these upstream providers, let's say a firewall, that support the incident API to actually trigger Veeam and say, hey, we've spotted something unusual in the environment. You can then determine what to do with that signal. You can choose to proactively go and protect your environment, maybe before something spreads, or you can kind of mark that as potentially malicious. And you'll actually see that for restore points created around the time that we receive that signal from that upstream provider, which is pretty powerful when you start thinking about this as a whole ecosystem. And then the security and compliance analyzer, that's all about you being able to run a kind of a quick check, a health check on your actual environment, not necessarily the upstream hypervisor. But what that's looking at is your Veeam configuration. Are all your repositories immutable? Are they encrypted? Are you using the best practices when it comes to, securing Veeam? So very quick and easy button that will guide you through the best practices when it comes to security and compliance of your backup environment. And then we kind of get to the really interesting side of things, and that's the during backup phase. If you remember during that sort of timeline that we showed out, this is where we start. Now, during this phase, we obviously want any of the scanning to be very fast. We don't want to impact any of your RPOs because we're scanning and doing an intensive scan. So these are built for speed, built for performance. So some of the things in here are indicators of compromise tool scanner. So the ability to find, again, similar to what that recon scanner does, but the ability to find common tools that live out there that we know that threat actors use. Things like, like data exfiltration tools, those lateral movement tools, and other tools that sit in the environment, and particularly on servers that they shouldn't be. Then we've got this AI-powered entropy analysis. So what that's actually doing is comparing each restore point and sort of building up a model of what normal looks like between. And when you start deviating from the sort of normal and you can tune that sensitivity level, you'll actually get an alert. And it's a really good early warning sign that maybe some encryption events are starting to take off in your environment. And then, of course, we want to make sure that you've got immutability client combined with single-use credentials, and then you can start leveraging also that deep analysis agent that sits across of this entire environment that we're talking about. And then from the post-backup and recovery side of things, this is where you've got more options in your toolkit. You can also go deeper on the scanning because this is a post-backup activity. So we really recommend, obviously, not only test backups to make sure they work, but we also sort of promote the fact that you should be scanning these restore points. How do you know that they're clean? You don't want to be restoring something back into production during a cyber event, as an example, that you don't know that's clean. So some of these can be done on demand, but some of these can also be done in an automated way. So we have Threat Hunter. That's a new whole signature database of known threats. We've got these Yara-based scanning rules. So for those of you who follow the sort of security industry, a lot of these security experts will actually create these Yara rules for known malware variants or known ransomware variants. So your ability to actually subscribe to any of these Yara-based signature rules and actually plug them straight into your backup and recovery environment and have that test every night to look for them. But it's also very good, like on a 0-day type event. You can create custom signatures yourself or subscribe to those feeds that have been created, and then actually load that rule and then rescan your entire environment for those, those rules that might have just come kind of to the, in the environment. And that's where that secure restore side comes to things. You can actually tick a box that says, I want to securely restore these, and that will go through and actually run these security scanning before it actually powers that virtual machine on. It'll make sure that that recovery point is clean. It is clean of any malware, any ransomware before it powers it on. And then the orchestrated restore and clean room, we have a product called Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. So for those of you who need to orchestrate DR, who need compliance and reporting for the board or for certain regulatory environments, you can actually have this orchestrated world where you can click a button, but it'll also continually test for you. So when you're not under this ransomware event or this kind of critical recovery event, it can actually be also just testing constantly so that you know that you've got a clean environment. You know you're going to meet your RTOs no matter where you're sort of recovering from and recovering to. And then, of course, we've got just some of the security partners that we work really well with. And we've got bi-directional kind of integration here where we'll actually push Veeam-based events also up into the likes of these platforms directly. And like I said, that incident API too, where we can start receiving some signals from some upstream systems as well, plays well. But if you're interested in sort of the broader ecosystem here on our website, we've got an entire page dedicated to partnerships. You can filter down by security or whatever you need to do. And then we talked a little bit around Coveware, and then this is pretty much what Coveware deal with. Not only will they provide the training and the preparation, that sort of proactive information for you as a customer, but if you are hit by an event, there's obviously a retainer here, and they'll actually analyze who they're dealing with. They use that against their biggest commercial database of information they have. They will negotiate if you require or if you would like them to. And then obviously if you require, they'll also handle the settlement and also help you decrypt. If you paid for that encryption key, they have some tools to do that in a more secure, more robust manner. Okay, and this is really the power of the Veeam design. We're not, sorry, Harris, I've clicked that again. It's very laggy, so I might be double clicking. The real power here of the Veeam architecture is its software defined nature. So you can see here hypervisor. So let's just talk HPE here. Oh, I promise I didn't click anything that time. Okay, hypervisor there, and then you've got this backup appliance, right? This backup appliance. We've talked about the different deployment models of either ISO or straight into a hypervisor. We have a secure that with MFA and 4eyes approval. We've obviously stripped out all of the SSH access there, so it's as secure as it can be. Now, we integrate really well with, different storage arrays, with storage snapshots, as well as that hypervisor. And then what happens is we also can have some agents if you've got physical-based workloads. And Veeam starts protecting it, right? We talk about that inline scanning, that sort of during backup phase, and that goes to either a hardened repository or any other storage offering that we support as a repository. You've got the options there, so you can mix and match what hardware, where it's run. Is it physical, is it virtual? And we make sure that it's immutable all the way through. And again, all the sensible defaults when it comes to the Veeam hardened repository. Otherwise, if you're using other targets, we can also go direct to object storage. It's configurable the way that you like, depending on what hardware you have in your arsenal, depending on what your preferences are for vendor. Lots of different options there. And then, of course, the last thing we kind of need to kind of plug in here is when we start talking about testing those backups. We've talked through this, your ability to not only scan for things, but also orchestrate the recovery in the DR side. Veeam Vault, we've talked about, this is where this additional offsite storage can come into play with a predictable kind of pricing model. And then last but not least, the ability to actually perform these cross-platform recoveries. And so when you start thinking about where you might already be and where you might want to go to in something like the HPE offering here, your ability to actually recover from VMware to kind of the HPE hypervisor becomes really interesting. And their ability to do that really comes down to this, what we call the portable data format. So Veeam has had this in play since day one. We've got your ability to actually move this data around, all centers around your ability, the way that we store the data. We're not storing it in the way that the hypervisor likes or that upstream provider likes. We actually store that in our own format. It means it's completely portable. It means if you want to go from on-premise to cloud, you can. If you want to go from cloud back to on-premise, you can. If you want to go from hypervisor to hypervisor, you can. So again, no matter what sort of issue you're trying to deal with, whether it be a migration use case or a disaster recovery use case, the portable data format and the Veeam backup and recovery engine really is what unlocks a lot of that. Okay, so now we're going to sort of move along a little bit around what we're bringing to offer today. That was a real broad overview of what Veeam does and where we're headed. But as of a not too long ago, we released an official plugin for Veeam's for HPE's hypervisor. So if we look at the relationship here, which we've been building for a while. Sorry, that button's really small. The good thing is Veeam and HPE have been working together for a very long time at that hardware layer, which is obviously critically important for the way we want to deploy Veeam, the way that you want to deploy it on different HPE offerings. But now the partnership's gone, even stronger. Our ability to connect into their hypervisor, which is what we're here to talk about today, is second to none. And that really gives you a complete kind of HPE and Veeam offering for you to move to, particularly as we cover off some of those things that Harris talked about at the start around sort of pressure around hypervisors. And we're not just talking about an agent-based backup here. We're talking about a proper hypervisor integration that has change block tracking that's going to give you those faster incrementals. We're not having to do full reads of full environments every single day. It's also going to reduce, the actual I/O operations needed to protect that. We also want you to have a full VM restore. So again, thinking about the portability story, if you're coming from a different hypervisor into into HVM, you can do that. But we also want you operationally to be able to recover full virtual machines as well. But we don't want you to lose that kind of pioneering ability for us to do this file level recovery either. So Veeam has this ability to recover individual files. And so you'll also get this out of the box with this integration that we're talking about. And application aware backups too. So for supported upstream applications, things like domain controllers, SQL, we want to make sure that the backup environment is aware of that operating system is aware that it has had a backup taken, and we can integrate that also. We don't want you to lose that because that's critically very important for a lot of enterprises. And we've talked about this already, the ability for you to move workloads to any Veeam supported platform as you need, either to or from, depending on what your use case is. And when we talk about mobility here, this is just some of the platforms we support, just to keep it kind of, keep this slide kind of short. But you can see that across the board, whether or not your ability to recover from HPE to Proxmox or Proxmox to HPE, it also comes with this application consistency, sure backup. So that's the ability to run those Yara rules and other those security checks on the environment, but also the backup integrity checks, these backup file checks. Losing any functionality by moving to HBM and still using Veeam under the hood that you would with any other hypervisor that we support.
Ben, just to interrupt for a minute, we actually had a question from Michael Meeks about when will VME VMs work with Sure Backup, and I think you sort of just addressed that, so maybe you could spend a minute on that for Michael.
Yeah, so we got Sure Backup Lite, which is a subset of features. For the other features, Michael, we rely on the upstream hypervisor to support some of the things that we might do with VMware today. So a lot of those are still in discussion with alliance partners. So you can do a level of Sure Backup, just not the full-blown VMware backup. So there's a few things missing in there. Granted, but all the Yara scanning and other bits and pieces are there. So if you Google Sure Backup Lite, or I can drop a link after I've finished talking here, you'll be able to see what it supports. It's in the tech guide there. So there is a level of capability out of the box already today. We're just waiting on obviously the rest of the world to sort of catch up on some of the things that we've had the luxury of doing with other hypervisors in a past life.
Awesome, thanks, Ben, and we'll provide that link a little bit later. Appreciate it.
Great, no problem. Good question. Yeah, it's a great feature. I mean, Sure Backup is absolutely fantastic. I think we've all moved on from doing basic health checks on backups to make sure, yes, the file was written to the repository correctly. We want to make sure they're clean. We want to make sure they work. So the ability to kind of to do that is critical for a lot of operators. So at a very high level, and I'm not the completely nuts and bolts guy who wrote the code, but you can see this as a proper integration. So down the bottom right here, you've got your backup and replication server with our plugin for HPE HVM. That plugin there really just talks to the HVM hypervisor. It's doing inventories of the environment, making sure that it can see everything, all the data stores, all the virtual machines, clusters, etc. It's also what orchestrates a lot of the workers and things that'll stand up, and it also orchestrates some of that recovery side of things when we go to recover. So that bottom layer is really all about communication and inventory, as well as some sort of lightweight tasks. But then the real power in terms of moving the actual data sits within this data mover itself. So on demand, as those machines are backing up, the data mover will actually deploy a dedicated VM into either the same host or the cluster that sits on the HVM side. That's what does all the magic in terms of the CBT, picking up all the data that we need, and obviously then sends that back into the Veeam side and can write that data into the backup repositories that we already support in the product today. So no matter if you're going directly to S3 storage, or if you're going to a hardened Linux repository, or you're going to another HPE array, all of that is supported. You choose your sort of destination there. But really that's the high level kind of how this works. So you can see it's a proper integration. We're not using agents within the virtual machines. It is a dedicated plugin that we've built alongside HPE here to make this work, make this enterprise grade, and make this a completely viable hypervisor and for you to move to, whilst maintaining your existing Veeam backup and replication skills in-house and all the training that you've done. It's just another hypervisor, as you'll see in a minute. So this is what I was talking about. If you're familiar with Veeam, if you've used Veeam, when you go to add a managed server, here you'll add a virtualization platform. Again, you can see some of the ones that we support here already. And now you'll see, provided you've got the plugin in, the HPE Morpheus VM Essentials plugin. So you just add that like any other hypervisor, connect all the credentials up, and away you go. In terms of creating jobs, you'll obviously see you can create a new job here that targets the VM Essentials, and because all that inventory process has happened, we can then pick that up. You can create a job, and all the same rules apply that you might have previously been accustomed to, the ability to add exclusions and other things in the environment. GFS obviously works. This is it targeting the backup repository. So you can see this is the exact same window that you'd be used to using. You target that backup repository. You can set the retention policy. You can, if you like, keep certain full backups for archival. So that GFS side of things, configure that normally the way that you do. So no loss in fidelity in terms of what you can do in Veeam because you're using HVM. Sorry, Harris, I don't want to click out again. If you go next slide. Sorry about this, folks. It's a bit laggy. Okay. And then obviously, once you've got those jobs, your ability to start jobs independently, run active fulls, view all the statistics, clone them. Again, all just a normal Veeam job that's targeting an HVM thing. There's no loss in functionality there. Okay. And then I guess once you've kind of gone through that setup process, you have your jobs. Again, all of the normal Veeam, the power of us to export the data and things works. So you can see here I've got the ability to export out a server to the Veeam zip format, which is something that's used by our customers a lot. And the ability to restore the entire VM. And you can see here, because I've selected an HVM machine, it obviously, ideally, you'll be going back to the HVM platform itself, but you also have those other options there. So if you wanted to burst this up into, say, Azure, you can from a testing standpoint. Maybe it's a dev test environment, whatever it is, you can have that portability kind of built in from day one. But most times you'll just be going back to the same hypervisor. Your ability to do guest files. So again, that sort of file level recovery capability, the ability to go in and grab a few files out of a server rather than having to restore that whole server back. And then the Sure Backup job. So that kind of addresses Michael's question there, the ability to actually run that Sure Backup. And again, that's that Sure Backup Lite mode, LITE. And so again, you can run that Sure Backup Lite. And you can see that that's run that scan there. In this case, it was running some of those Yara rules that we have built in. But again, you can customize the Yara rules you like. There's plenty of published, security blogs and groups and researchers that actually publish really big lists that are updated frequently that you can plug straight into your Veeam environment. So you're constantly up to date with the latest threats. And with that, I will pass back to Harris or Chris.
It would be me, so I'm happy to take over. But before I do that, I thought maybe we could take one of the questions from the queue while you're presenting, Ben. So David asked, do we have an indication of when Veeam 1 will support HPE VME?
Yeah, let me grab the answer while you guys talk, and I'll just answer.
Okay, great.
I can see it here, so I'll answer in line
cool.
to David.
Yeah, there's a few questions in there. If you could attend to those, that would be great. And I'll take over now, and I'll talk a little bit more about Morpheus VM Essentials. So for those who attend this webinar, I think you all know that Morpheus VM Essentials is one of two management consoles that we offer to control an HPE or VMware virtualized environment. So VM Essentials is our equivalent of vCenter. And the primary use cases that we're looking to address with VM Essentials are as follows. So first and foremost, we want to provide customers with a much more cost-effective alternative to their current vendor, whether that's VMware or someone else. So, Morpheus VM Essentials is priced very competitively to work in a range of environments, whether you're an SMB or a large enterprise. And as I mentioned, the key is that Morpheus VM Essentials can manage both our hypervisor, HVM, as well as a VMware ESXi environment. And so that gives customers the ability to either run a hybrid environment if they wish for however long they need, or it can be a mechanism to help them transition away from VMware to HVM, on whatever timeline makes sense for them, right? So that may take weeks or months or years. We're giving our customers the flexibility to do that. And VM Essentials can be, deployed onto existing hardware, or it can be part of a wider private cloud solution, which Chris is going to talk about in a moment. And of course, because Morpheus Veeam Essentials is an HP product, it's supported in the same way through the same mechanisms that you get support from HPE. So if you have a hardware problem, you can call HP support and we'll help you. We'll also support you with Morpheus Veeam Essentials. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but I wanted to share with you some of the supported integrations that we've been testing. And of course, the big theme today, of course, is integration with Veeam. So, that's what we're focusing on. I won't have time to cover all of the different integrations today, but I wanted to provide you with this list to show you that we have a very broad ecosystem, okay? And, we also are cognizant of the fact that we cannot possibly test every single hardware and software configuration that a customer has. And so we offer a self-certification process as well. So if you have a setup that doesn't align with what you see on this chart, please let us know and we'll be happy to work with you to get that environment certified. As long as it works, we'll give you the same scripts that we run in our own lab. And if you get a passing result with those tests, then we will put you on our certified list. Now, obviously, you don't need to do that with Veeam because we've already done that certification. That's why it's on this list. But obviously, if there's something that's not on this list that's important for you, let us know. And we'd love to work with you because we want to provide the best and broadest support possible. Now, with that, I'll hand over to Chris, and he can talk a bit more about Private Cloud Business Edition and how that works with Veeam.
Great, thanks, Harris. So the HP Private Cloud Business Edition, this is just a bit of a recap for people who haven't maybe got the detail in earlier webinars, just to really let you know where it is at the moment. So next slide, please, if you could. So the HP Private Cloud Business Edition, probably the best way of thinking about it, or just back one, yep. So it's a self-managed private cloud that we build for you. Like you can actually build your own private cloud, by having your own compute, network, servers, and software, and so forth. But it's a fair bit of effort, and it's sort of repeating stuff that you can actually buy as a package from us. We actually provide an integrated private cloud. You run and manage it yourself, and the advantage of that is that you can actually get on with hosting your applications and so forth, rather than worrying about infrastructure. So the advantages of the HP private cloud is, of course, the lower licensing costs, especially with the HVM hypervisor. You've actually got a choice of hypervisors, so we don't lock you into the HPE HVM. You can also use VMware as well, and that can be managed from Veeam Essentials. So in terms of setup, we make it very simple to set up. We actually have automated out-of-box setup scripts there. Also to scale, as you add more nodes, that's actually integrated with that as well. And we also have integrated protection and resiliency in there. In terms of how you want to consume it, if you want to take it as a service through HP GreenLake, we offer that, or traditional CapEx. And overall, the reason why you look at the Private Cloud Business Edition is if you do need to get support, we've integrated it for you, so you can basically use HP to provide you enterprise-grade support rather than having to do it yourself. So there's two broad families in terms of how it's done. Next slide, please. So on the left, we have what we call a disaggregated HCI. So what we actually do is we actually build a private cloud from HP Electra storage array. So we actually use a real storage array or flash, gives you very low latency. We offer 100% data availability guarantee. And the storage can do things like your snapshots and so forth without having to tax the compute layer. We also have compute and switches as part of the ensemble. The big beauty of this is that you can actually scale your compute and storage independently. They're not tied together. You don't have compute running your storage for you. Because you've got a separate storage array, if you need more compute, you can put that in. If you need more storage capacity or throughput, you can put that in independently. And on the right, using the HP Simplicity technology, so that now fully supports the HVM hypervisor as well. This is a true hyper-converged offering. It allows you to run HA in a very small footprint of 2 nodes, and you can scale up from there. It's got built-in data protection. It's used probably in small instances where I don't need a big compute footprint, or if you're using it for edge workloads as well. So really you've got a choice here. You can have the traditional 3-tier, but with a full hyper-converged management, or you can have traditional hyper-converged. And really just to tie this in with what we're talking about today. So with the Veeam plugin, it doesn't matter if you're running HVM or if you're running ESX, you've got the Veeam functions that you're used to getting, change block tracking, incremental backups, been able to back up your applications in consistent checkpoints, and been able to use the full Veeam management suite. But probably the beauty for us is that if you are in an environment where you've got multiple hypervisors, you have multiple platforms and locations, Veeam lets you basically restore to any of your on-prem hypervisors. You can restore to different data centers. It might be, your edge with SimpliVity and your core with the PCBE, disaggregated HCI, or even public cloud. So really it gives you the choice and a rich, consistent toolkit in order to do that. Thanks for that. I might hand back to Harris for some customer use cases.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. So what I wanted to share with you quickly before we get into Q&A is just, to give everyone on the call some comfort that, now that the Veeam Essentials has been out, for well over a year, we have a number of customers who have successfully deployed and adopted the technology. And we're fortunate that, some of them have been willing to publish some case studies with us. So I'm including some case studies in the pack. I will make this pack available to all attendees. And in the notes section, there's a link to our public website. If you want to reference this case study in the video, you can see there's little green clickable links in the corner. I'll give you the copy of this. So this is Danfoss. They're a large global manufacturer. Danfoss was actually part of our early adopter program. So we had about 50 or so customers who adopted Veeam Essentials before we launched it to the general public to make sure that the product was functioning and working as expected, and that we had customers who were able to successfully deploy. And I'm now pleased to report that Danfoss has over 20,000 virtual machines running on the Morpheus platform in production. We also have AstraZeneca. They're a large pharmaceutical customer. They've been a long-standing Morpheus customer. They were actually a Morpheus customer before we acquired Morpheus, and they have over 16,000 virtual and physical servers running under Morpheus today across 15 locations globally. They're also using Morpheus to manage their public cloud environments, such as AWS, Azure, and GCP. Cambrian Credit Union, they're a financial services institution in Canada. They're a long-standing PCBE customer. They ran a prior version of PCBE with VMware, but post-acquisition by Broadcom, Cambrian Credit Union felt that they were looking for something that was more cost-effective. They really liked the PCB platform utilizing SimpliVity, and now they're running that same platform, but with Veeam Essentials. And then finally, a newer case study that we have is for a stadium in Miami, Florida. The Inter Miami CF soccer team is the customer in new stadium, and that in-stadium experience is all powered by Morpheus Veeam Essentials. So I'll make a copy of these case studies available for folks, and if you have further questions about them, I'm happy to address them. So with that, I'll hand back with Ben to give us a bit of a wrap up, and then we can get in some live questions. Okay.
Great. Yeah. So I think we've covered off a lot of these, but just to recap kind of where we're at, I think you can see with the level of integration that we have, it's not agent based. You can see, you've heard from Harris and Chris around, the robustness of that platform. So really you can modernize without risk. You're not losing any functionality. You're not going to a lesser platform when it comes to going to HVM. You can reutilize your existing kind of Veeam, your Veeam infrastructure, your Veeam skills without reworking any of those sort of recovery processes. The portability is critical. I think we're talking around going from, potentially the exodus out of other hypervisors, maybe it's over time, but your ability to actually lift and shift those workloads using Veeam into that alternate hypervisor for anything that we support is second to none. Just gives you more recovery paths, more options, either from a migration standpoint, but also, maybe, during your darkest hour, through a disaster recovery type scenario or a cyber incident that might be occurring in your environment. because it's not an agent-based backup, because we've built those data movers correctly in the way that we spin up the infrastructure inside the HVM side of things, you are going to still get very fast backups. Fast daily incrementals, all the things you're used to enjoying with the Veeam environment, you will still get if you're leveraging HVM. And then, of course, our ability to encrypt data and send it to different repositories and make sure you're complying with the sort of 3, 2, and then 1, and then the 1 and the 0. The 0 being kind of no errors. Making sure that you're still compliant. Again, you're not going to lose anything by retaining Veeam, moving hypervisor because you've moved to HVM. Also get out of the box all of those sort of scanning capabilities that we have in there as well. And that really, wraps up kind of, I think, what we've talked about today for the most part. So I know we've got lots of questions. Some of them are a bit technical for me, but I don't know how Chris and Harris, I'll get the answers for some of them that I know. But I'm not normally that deep into the product to know all the bits and bytes, but I can definitely get the answer for you and fire them across. So I don't know how you normally do that.
Yeah, that's all right. So what we can do, I keep the chat running after the webinar. So we can post questions to the chat, or if you want, Ben, we can, you can put together like a Q&A document and we can publish that after the webinar. So whatever works for you, but I will make sure that we get people the answers. So we've got a few minutes left, and I appreciate those who have stuck with us. And we've got a raised hand. So Nathan, thanks for being very polite, following the protocol. You're welcome to, come off mute and ask your question. Or if it's the question that you had in the chat, we can address that now. So how can we help you today? I might have to.
It might be the question he's already got.
I'm going to allow his mic. Hang on a second. That's my bad. Let me allow his microphone. All right, and I'll allow your camera as well, Nathan. So if you'd like to come off mute and turn your camera on, you're more than welcome to. You're also welcome to type if you prefer. There you are. Welcome.
Hi there. It is kind of the question I asked in there, but I'll expand on it more. Just to sing the praises, I've just installed had the whole thing set up with our VME environment, and from first impressions, from what I've tested so far, I can back up, I can restore like I could with VMware from VME to VME, absolutely no issue whatsoever. Excellent.
Fantastic.
I can even restore a VM from VME back into VMware, and to my shock, that worked perfectly. The question I have is, can I restore a VM from VMware and restore it into VME? Physically, it lets me do it. It's giving me blue screens. Is that supposed to work, or is that not actually supposed to work? That's why the question about, is it a driver's problem? It's telling me the drivers.
That should be working. I mean, it is supported. So have you logged a support case with our engineers at all on that?
Not yet. I've literally just had the problem and just thought, hey, I'll ask the question in case you guys say it's actually not supposed to work. Don't try.
From VMware to HVM?
Yeah, because that essentially could be a migration strategy.
Yeah, that's right. So that is a supported method. So I would, log a support ticket. They'll guide you to the best ways. I was looking before around the options. I'm not that deep in the operationally day-to-day within that product. So I don't know the engineering ins and outs like an SE from our side necessarily would, but I can certainly get you that detail. But I would certainly, if you've got a supported version of Veeam, which it sounds like you do, log a support ticket. That team who's based in Australia will help you out and guide you through the right process and show you either how to do it, or if it is a product bug, they'll also facilitate raising that up to engineering. So start
That's
there.
Excellent news. That sounds like what I wanted to hear. So thank you.
And thanks for raising that, Nathan. I can tell you that we have a number of other customers who are utilizing Veeam in this scenario successfully. So I'm sure you'll be in really good hands with Veeam support to get you what you need. But what you're trying to do should work, and we've got other customers that have done it successful. So I think you're on the right path.
That's right.
Sam, did you have a comment?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Sam had a comment on the VirtIO drivers. I just can't remember if it's something we inject or that's something that has to be driven from the HBM. But maybe Sam, if you've had personal experience with these problems, how did you solve that?
There's a few more steps to it. It's not just a straight restore out of the Veeam console. So I do have a bit of a workflow, and I'll connect with you after this session, Nathan, and I can send you that information.
That'd be great. Thanks. If you've got some documentation, I did look for something and couldn't find anything obvious in the Veeam or HP sites. So
Yeah, I've actually taken a note down to send that to our support team to enhance either the KB article for it or actually enrich the technical, documentation for the HVM plugin itself. So I'll do that after this.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben. And Sam, thanks for joining today. For those who don't know Sam, he leads our pre-sales team here. I'm sure many of you have worked with him. He's one of the very smart people who works in the background to make sure these webinars function and that we all say the right thing. So thanks for that, Sam. Appreciate it. Couple more minutes here. I'm gonna pick out, obviously, if other people want to come off mute, raise your hand and I'll give you camera and voice control. But I thought I'd pull a question out of the queue here. So Bryce has the question. I'm assuming he's running Morpheus Enterprise, which, for those who are not aware, support multi-tenant environments. So it's very common. Maybe you're a managed service provider, you're hosting multiple customers. One of the questions I think he's asking here is, can Veeam support backup of a multi-tenant Morpheus Enterprise environment?
Yeah.
And are there any timelines we can share there?
Good question. I don't. I've been working with a few service providers primarily in the last month or so on this exact question, because that's the mode that they're deploying it in. At this stage, I don't have any timeline to share publicly. I know that it has visibility of engineering and HPE alliances internally. So that's probably all I can share publicly for now, but it's not currently supported, no.
Guys, let me just reassure you, this is a very, very well-known issue. There are lots of service providers who have requested this. It is being actively worked on by both engineering teams, and I hope that we'll be able to have Ben back really soon to give us an update when we're able to launch this new capability. So stay tuned. We're listening. We hear you, and there are plans being made. Okay. All right. Maybe we have time for one more. Seth's asked a great question. Do we need to install Veeam version 13 to be compatible with VME? And the reason he's asking that question is they're integrating with 11.11 for cloud backup, and apparently, according to him, they don't support version 13 yet. So what's the story on support?
Right. So Seth, yes, you need. I've just dropped you the link to the actual user guide for the actual system requirements. So 13.01.1071, which will be the latest version of 13 that you can get, or at least should be moving to. So yes, you will. And the reason I'm assuming that your 11.11 dependency is because you're using Cloud Connect. So yes, you will need to. I would, if you haven't already, reach out to 11.11 and see when they're planning on upgrading some of their infrastructure from that side of things. But yes, if you're wanting to throw these to a Cloud Connect environment, that is the case. Of course, you could potentially redirect some of those backups directly to object storage rather than going through the Cloud Connect gateway, which means that you could probably bypass their requirement of them also being on version 13. So you could leverage either copy jobs to object storage or form that part of your scale-out backup repository from a capacity standpoint. So yeah, there's some ways of maybe working around it if their timelines are a bit more extended, and due to maybe some supportability side on our end as well. So yeah, I would reach out to them, see what they're saying in terms of a timeline, and then if it's an urgent issue, potentially look at throwing it to S3 storage.
Thanks for that, Ben. There's another question from Seth, which is a really good one. Do we need a new SimpliVity platform to run VM Essentials? We have an existing SimpliVity environment, and hardware costs currently outweigh any licensing savings for VME if hardware needs refreshing. So a couple points on that. So first of all, for those who are not aware, we do have a hardware and software compatibility list for VM Essentials. I'm going to put a link in the chat for folks. So if you want to know, hey, what hardware do we actually support and not support, it's there in the list. So I've given you that. It's a good a good reference. I'll also share my screen now and show you this quickly so that we can address the specific question on SimpliVity. So you're absolutely correct. SimpliVity is supported, okay? However, we support SimpliVity Gen 11 and above, obviously Gen 11 being the latest and greatest, okay? So I'm assuming from your question that you're running a SimpliVity Gen 10 or older system. And the answer is it's not on the supported list, okay? But there's a couple things that we can do to assist you. So happy to work with you offline. If you'd like to send me an email, you're more than welcome to. In fact, I'll put my email in the chat now for folks. HP emails are very easy. It's firstname.lastname@hp.com. You get special credit if you spell my last name correctly. I've put it in the chat for you for that reason. And with that, I just want to say a big thank you. Thanks for sticking with us. I hope you found this webinar to be valuable. I want to tell you that in a few weeks, we'll be doing another webinar on HPE Zerto and how that works with Morpheus VM Essentials. And we're going to look at some disaster recovery scenarios, which should be really exciting. So definitely tune in for that. We'll make sure you all get an invite. And we're also interested in getting feedback on other topics that you'd like to hear about in the future. And for those who know me know, anytime you ask me a good question, often we'll turn that into a webinar. So, you know, that's the benefit of engaging in this live format. So thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate you all joining. Have a great rest of your week. And we look forward to talking with you in a few weeks. Take care.